Hey there, everybody. It's me, Carpo. I'm at work. It's about 4 hours into my shift. I'm taking my break here, and I thought I'd make a little video talking about the limits of knowledge. I had to come to work early this morning for a delivery of metal. I guess I was going to use that as kind of a segue into my discussion. When the metal got delivered, which is going to be the roofing and the cladding for the tiny house we're building right here, I was thinking about how I've just recently learned how to install certain types of metal in certain applications. The limits of my knowledge are always called into question when I do carpentry of any type, because I'm not just a woodworker. We build everything from the ground up. So we're working with metal, we're doing electrical, plumbing, all of this. No matter how much I learn as a carpenter, there's always something new to learn, and I welcome that. In fact, I would probably quit tomorrow if I'd done everything that I could possibly do, because to me, learning and evolving is part of the process of growing. I've never been to the metal factory where they produce the metal. I've never serviced the machines that they use to bend the metal into the shapes that they make them. And I would imagine the people that work there and that do bend the metal and paint it to our specifications, they probably don't understand how the machines work either. That goes to someone else. The components for that machine, that's for someone else to understand. The type of metallurgy and knowledge about various metals that goes into making the bearings and the collets and the various bits and drill bits and everything else to make this work, down to the cutting wheels. All of this is compartmentalized knowledge. I guess that would be the way to define it, but not compartmentalized in the sense like the military uses. In that application, compartmentalization of information means that one guy works on this part of a secret spy plane, and this guy works on this part, and this guy works on this part, and nobody can ever see the whole. This is often what is said about, say, alien research or UFOs, these kinds of things. Well, it's compartmentalized. Nobody really knows and has the full story. Well, this goes for everything. Nobody has the full story of anything. I'm still learning how wood shrinks and different types of wood and grain patterns and the best way to cut a piece of wood after 20 years of doing this. There's always something to learn. So to get to my point, I'm open and aware that my knowledge is limited on many topics. In fact, a vast majority, I would say 99.9% of things that I could know, I don't know. And I would imagine this is the same for you. In fact, we could even take the most worldly person that we could imagine, and I can't imagine who that would be, because honestly, some of the folks that are revered in society seem to be some of the least knowledgeable about what I consider the most important topics. Not to throw names or give you an example, but many people know I despise Elon Musk. I don't really care if people consider him a genius or if he's made a bunch of money. To me, the guy makes really dumb decisions on an intellectual level, showing that a person can be smart, a person can be intelligent, yet not have the attributes that someone else would consider to be the most important. Emotional intelligence, for example, learning that you don't have to defend yourself on Twitter from every person that doesn't like you. But that's just one example, and I make a great effort not to throw names, because it's not that I despise people for being wealthy, it's that I know what it takes to get there, the type of mentality. And many people look up to them and revere them as worldly and intelligent. Say, how could you get this much money and have this much power and influence if you weren't a genius? And maybe that's so. But when I analyze the people who have a lot of money, for example, that genius seems to be limited to making money. Not often thinking through, is this a good attribute for myself or for the world I live in? In fact, many of the decisions that people make are based on very poor preconceived notions about how things work. I'll give you a great example that I was going to make a video about yesterday, but I decided not to because it just seems so just shallow and pointless, and I try not to cover current events. Yesterday, my wife sent me this article from Burning Man. Apparently, a group of protesters decided to block the road into Burning Man. Now, a 30-second synopsis if you're not familiar. Burning Man is in the Nevada desert on what they call the playa, or a dry lake bed. It happens every year. It's about a week or two long, and everybody goes out, sets up their villages and their tents and parties and goes home, and they have a very strong ethos of leave no trace, try to minimize waste, these kinds of things. A group of like 4 or 5 people went out and they blocked the main road in, which is the only way. When people are going to Burning Man, there's miles of traffic already. But they decided to set up a trailer and a whole bunch of coolers and crap in the middle of the road and sit there. And these were the people who associate with the Just Stop Oil group, or rather they call themselves the XR, Extinction Rebellion. Now, the reason I bring them up is because they're a perfect example of having a complete disregard for the bigger picture of what you're doing, not understanding that by disrupting the flow of traffic, it is not making an impact on how many fossil fuels we burn. If anything, it's the direct opposite. People are burning more oil by sitting in traffic. And the people who drove out to protest also drove vehicles out there that were gas vehicles. And one guy in a solar RV was quoted as saying, it's funny, I'm sitting here in my solar RV and here's these people blocking the road, causing more traffic jams and more oil pollution. And their whole claim is that burners should be more aware. Burners or Burning Man attendees, should even try harder to burn less propane and, stop using single-use plastics. The thing is, and the point here is that we all understand this. The lack of connection from these people is their dismay for the average person, believing that because I'm driving to work or going to an event in my vehicle and I get stopped because there's a line of traffic behind some people who block the road, they're basically insinuating that I'm not already aware that we have problems with pollution and with the climate fears. I really won't go into that because that's a whole can of worms that gets opened up about how much the earth naturally warms over time, the different types of carbon and CO2 in the atmosphere that can be measured to show that we are contributing significantly to global warming, climate change, whatever weekly definition we want to call it. Word salad. The fact is the climate will change. It always has changed, and we're probably contributing to it. But still the fact remains that you don't punish your neighbor who is forced into the same system as you in order to make the people on top listen. If they were more self-aware of what they're doing, they would spend their time at the factories, the ExxonMobil, places like that, or going to a place like China, where China emits more carbon pollution than all of the rest of the developed countries combined. Now, this is a fact now. China spews more carbon than all of them combined, and if the US went, quote, green tomorrow, which really is a misnomer, it's something we should strive towards being. However, solar panels and windmills still require rare earth elements. They still require mining. They still require transportation. And even if you made all the cars electric, and California is realizing this problem, they'll have to tell you not to charge your car because the grid can't handle the electric. And that electricity has to be made where? At power plants. How is it made? By burning oil or coal. No, we can't go to nuclear because people are so scared of nuclear. This comes down to another lack of information, a lack of knowledge about different types of nuclear facilities. The fact that we can make them without the potential of meltdown now, that we can make different types of safeguards and redundancies which are much safer than back in the 40s and 50s when we started this project. People are stuck in the past because it's all they know. And our information, the information we think we have on topics, is often derived from things we learned 10 or 20 years ago, which may still hold true, but they may be completely outdated. And we refuse to budge, we refuse to compromise. Even if we're caught completely full of shit, we will still find a way to justify it. I consider myself a rational man, for what that's worth. I try to look at things as topics, not as, well, I have to prove that I'm right here or that other person's wrong. But I still find myself getting caught up in debates and arguments and saying, well, no, this is why I feel the way I feel. I've learned a lot about myself since the internet. Not to get too far into a discussion about the internet and social media itself, but I believe that we're in a waking up process here. Not about being woke about spirituality or social justice or rights or any of this. These are all important topics. But being awakened to the fact that people are rather simple creatures when you really get down to it. We never could get into the mind of another person, but by observing how these social interactions take place online, you not only get an idea of how people might really feel inside, but also the excuses and bullshit and walls people might put up in order to defend themselves or others. Basically, we're doing our best to try to understand each other, and I feel we're at the very birth of a better understanding. I know that some people believe that, for example, at one time in history we had a psychic connection, and that people, I was having a discussion just the other day about this, said that we had a psychic connection at one time, and that people didn't need to be individuals, that the ego is a bad thing, and that at one time we all just did what we needed to do and didn't see differences in each other. And I said, wow, that sounds a lot like communism to me. Not in a bad way, but yeah, in a bad way, in the sense that to me, the difference between us, the differences between you and I, are what make our lives rich. My curiosity about why you think the way you think, the comment you might leave that might leave me thinking. I've had comments that had me thinking for years. Wow, that person made a good point. Something as simple as an old guy telling me don't think too much one time. It's like, and this was like a philosopher type guy. I was like, what do you mean? Well, I get it now. I understand. The more you think, the less you realize you know. It's the old Socratic conundrum of I think, not I think, therefore I am. Sorry, that was Descartes. Socrates, which I forgot, brain fart. But let's just put it this way. It's the greatest wisdom lies in knowing you know nothing. I knew it would come to mind. Basically, the less you know, sometimes the better off you are, depending on your circumstance and the world you live in. If you believe that God is a man with a beard in the sky and that everything in the Bible is true, in some parts of the world people would insult you for that. In others, people would celebrate you for that. If you were a fully scientific person who only uses science as a basis for reality and doesn't trust any of your own senses and your own awareness, doesn't think that consciousness has any greater meaning, a complete materialist, that the universe just formed by chance out of nothing, there was a big bang, which, by the way, takes, I think, more faith to believe in than religion itself. Like, when you really process these things, you realize that people don't know shit, and therefore we're always looking for a way to grasp onto truth, and science becomes a religion. But anyhow, a person with a scientific background in one part of the world may be respected, and in another, a person would say, who cares? Like, why do you care what the atomic structure of a leaf is? How is this going to help me to understand what's best to eat? You see, we do a lot of pointless research, but we celebrate it. and I'm not saying it's pointless. I should reiterate that it's important, but it's not as valuable as, say, a spiritual connection. It's my belief as a scientific, rational-minded person that's curious about life and truth, I've come to the conclusion that your spiritual connection with life, even if it's somewhat delusional, is far, far more important than your rational mind and scientific understanding of the world around you. It has been shown that people who are religious tend to be happier, lead happier lives. This isn't always true, of course. But through the experiences we've had on the internet talking with each other, I've learned a lot about my fellow man and the desperate attempt people have to rationalize what they think, why they think it, and that if you don't have something to hang on to, a belief system, a system of values and understanding about the universe, even if it's turtles on turtles, if you don't have that, you will create it. I don't recall which philosopher it was, if it was Immanuel Kant or somebody like that, but it doesn't really matter. All the philosophers, they all have great points, and it doesn't matter what their name was. That's the beauty of knowledge and information. You just know when it resonates with you. But he was said that in a society that abandons religion, which at that time there weren't any, the U.S. really is one of the first, I guess, developed countries, if you will, to, completely pretty much abandon religion to an extent. I mean, there's still a majority of Americans, at least I think 2/3 are still religious, but within those groups, many don't go to church or really celebrate it. It's just kind of something they hang on to. My family was Christians, my family were Catholics, whatever. Not too serious about it, but I think that that's better. I think that it's better not to be too serious, yet to have something that you can believe in. And I'll explain why. He said that in a society where we abandon religion, he said he believes that people will find religion in politics instead. Does that resonate with what's going on in the world right now? That people have dug their heels into left or right politics, or up or down politics, or science in the same way. Follow the science, believe the science, trust the science. We saw how that turned out during COVID. Now there's all this data coming out that disputes what we were told, which many of us already knew. But at the same time, instead of people who may have supported lockdown policies or whatnot, instead of them looking at the new data and saying, okay, I need to change my opinion about this based on the new information, people have done the opposite. They refuse to look at it. They refuse to learn. They refuse to educate themselves. And this is exactly what happens in religion. I've had conversations with people who are Christians. I've said, have you read the Bhagavad Gita? Have you read the Quran? Have you read any Judaic philosophy or the Kabbalah or Kabbalah? Pronounce it how you choose. I have. Not all of them, not all of it, of any one of those books, but I've also read the Bible. I've read the Mormon Bible. I have, the only one I haven't really looked into was Scientology, but, L. Ron Hubbard can keep that shit. The point being that I've learned as much as I need to learn about religion to understand that, no, they're not all the same. And yes, we all need something to believe in. It makes us happier people. For me personally, just kind of define my position here. No, I'm not a pantheist. I know that's a label that gets thrown around, which is the belief that everything is conscious. But I believe everything is conscious. No, I do not believe that one of your sneakers has a mind of its own, or that a rock thinks about things. I believe that we're often defining consciousness based on what we think it to be. And we can't even define our own consciousness. So, in essence, I believe that everything as a whole is aware of itself in a way that we can't even begin to comprehend in our pathetic minds. Yeah, call it God, call it the all, call it the universal mind. It doesn't matter. Source. putting English words on these things do not matter. The point is that we have some part of a mystical experience in our life that leads us to believe that there's something greater than ourselves. And my God, why would you not want to think that? Is it because we're afraid that we might be looked upon as, less scientific if we believe in God, for example? I know some people say that Einstein believed in God at the end of his life, and they use that as an example for even scientists, need to believe. It's more complicated than that, but you should read some of the things he wrote. If you Google Einstein's words about beliefs and religion, I don't know how to look it up. You'll figure that shit out on the internets. But it's really interesting to hear the way he puts it. It's almost, in essence, once you've reached a certain level of understanding of the world around you, in whatever niche that you're in, even though it's still only 0.01% of knowledge, if that, you realize that God as an idea isn't something that we can know or prove, and it never has been. This is where the term faith comes from, but believe me, I know it sounds like I'm off track talking about religion here. When you start to see the value in belief systems and understand it differently, then you realize that humans really are rather simple creatures. We just need something to believe in, something to, keep us excited, keep us interested. That might be politics, that might be sports, that might be a hobby, could be many different things. But having a bigger picture of the universe where we're looking outside of ourselves and down at ourselves while still looking up at ourselves, I think it's the only way to lead a truly satisfying life. Humble yourself before whatever you might call God. Some people can't do it. I understand, because I was one. I never became religious. I was never born with a religious family. We didn't talk about religion at all, and I considered myself agnostic for my whole life. Basically, show me the money. You show me a God and I'll believe it. So, anyhow, this point of bringing religion into this discussion about knowledge, there is so much time spent debating proof, evidence, such as, well, you can't prove your God is real, therefore it's fake. And this is why I brought up the Big Bang. The Big Bang Theory is based on things like mathematical principles that I know you and I don't understand, various algorithms, and also looking through a telescope, seeing distant galaxies and saying, well, these have red color to them. This is what we call redshift. And the belief is that light, as it passes through space, gradually loses the blues. The reds go the farthest, therefore the universe must be 13.6 billion years old. And judging by what we see, there must have been all from a single infinitesimally small point, particle-sized piece, that blew up and became the entire universe. All of this might be true. But what amazes me is that people believe it without question because they heard it from a scientist, which heard about it from another scientist, which heard about it from another scientist. And then recently, with the new James Webb telescope, they found out that some of these galaxies are moving apart. They were more developed than we thought. So perhaps the universe is older. We're not sure. None of this surprises me. We just don't know. But we're really desperate to put a label on it, and we always have been. It's just human nature. So what do we do about it? There's nothing we can do about it. We just find something to believe in, something that moves us. We create our own values and stick with it. But my God, being willing to change your opinion. I heard somebody say, well, we can't change our views on the universe because so many scientists have spent so much time, learning about these things, and they've dedicated their whole careers to it. We can't tell them they're wrong. It's like, why not? But that always kind of surprised me. But the point here is that believing in the Big Bang takes faith. It may be faith in other humans, but it's still faith. It's belief without any evidence yourself. And that's always the amount of vigor which people put forward when convincing others that this is the truth. It's something that's universal. It doesn't matter what the belief system is. So all we can do is humble ourselves and say, I really don't know. I don't know how big the universe is. You know, dark matter, and dark energy, these were created to fill voids in the math that they couldn't figure out. Well, the universe, the galaxies should be flying apart from each other. Well, there's something called dark matter that we can't see. Okay, that makes sense. And I know, to a layman or somebody who doesn't study these things, hey, good enough if a scientist said it. And I'm not a fucking astrophysicist, but I do believe that the average person's opinions do matter, because I've always been fascinated with space. I've always watched every universe show. I've learned as much as I can about the planets and the moons, and it's always fascinated me, just like with the supposed info on aliens or anything else. I love information. I love knowledge, as long as it's something that's conducive with living, with a more understanding life. That's why I avoid political bullshit. I don't go into banter. I don't read articles about politicians or celebrities. They don't matter to me. What matters is humanity as a whole. That's the news I'm interested in. I'm curious to why we feel the way we feel. Only so we can lead better lives, because damn, I don't know shit. Neither do you. We have a small piece of the pie. If we could get together and sit in a group, or with even two people, and just say, I really don't know, what do you think? And be willing to compromise and discuss topics philosophically, we're all much better off. And I firmly believe that. And I think we're coming to that. I think that people are tired of arguing, they're tired of fighting. We've gone from a lot of flashy nonsense and hubris and arrogance and podcasts and videos that are all about getting attention, to having the most popular podcast in the world be Joe Rogan, which to me is a great point to make before I go here. Rogan has people who love his show and people who hate it, and then others who just don't have any interest whatsoever either way. The ones who like it love the long format. It's not about Joe Rogan himself, and I've heard even philosophers try to pick apart, why do people love Joe Rogan? Guys, it's not fucking Joe Rogan people like, okay? It's not Joe that people go for. It's the guests he has on his show. If it was Joe just talking, nobody would listen. I mean, people would, but he is open enough to interview and talk with people who have different opinions than he does. This shouldn't be rare, but it is. And some people are so threatened by another person's claims or knowledge that they're willing to hate a person because they platform someone. I would just like to say this. Everyone should be platformed. Everyone should be able to discuss how they feel without ridicule just because somebody disagrees with one of their other opinions. This is childish and pathetic, and we need to move past it. But I understand. This is why I've tried to understand the psychology of this, that people don't want to hear anything that might conflict with what they already want to believe. They shut down. So I always try to keep my mind as open as possible, and remember that I guess one of the most valuable things that I've learned is to never associate myself with an idea to the point where somebody would make me angry because they disagreed. In other words, if I dismissed somebody's religion, that might anger them, but it shouldn't, because if you truly have faith, it matters not what I think. If somebody dismisses my version of God or the belief the universe is conscious, I don't even bat an eye. I couldn't care. I have no interest in other people trying to convince me that what I believe is wrong, unless that thing is maybe dangerous to me. Oh, you shouldn't eat this food, or maybe you should, exercise or do this or do that. But opinions based on belief systems that give us comfort, the only reason a person will dispute somebody else's belief system is either A, to reinforce their own belief system, or B, because they just don't understand and they're jealous that another person has something they can hang on to. And there's a lot of negativity out there, but I see mostly positivity and a lot of changes out there that are taking place. So with that, hell, it's been a half an hour long discussion. I guess this is probably one of my longer videos, but I think that if we disassociate ourselves with our ideas and put us over here and our ideas over here, imagine you go into a debate or a discussion with somebody, to be able to completely let go of your opinions and just look at the subject neutrally and say, okay, maybe this person is right or wrong, but without taking it personal. Can't say how many times I've had a discussion where people take words out of context, twist them around and say, oh, you really mean this or this. No, I mean exactly what I said. But if you want clarification, I'll give it to you. But it's hard for many people to understand some basic concepts, and so having discussions can be hard. And it's hard to define who we are. We need to give each other a break and take it all with kind of a grain of salt and a smile. And with that, I appreciate your time. Thanks for listening. As usual, I have no sponsors except nature. I'm not going to taint my message with some battle tank video game or a BetterHelp, which, on a side note, I've seen this a lot on philosophy videos and life discussions. By the way, this is sponsored by BetterHelp. Don't ever contact me, BetterHelp. I don't buy into that shit. I've heard too many negative things about these companies that think they can just, talk to you on the phone and change your life. I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people, but anyway, that kind of stuff just bothers me. It's like predatory on people who are already trying to figure out life. Oh, call us and we'll help you. But anyway, no sponsors, but you can help to contribute to the channel if you go to Patreon/Carpo719. And I appreciate all my patrons. Just want to say, side note, I finally got around to getting my editing program back so I can make some more edited videos, so I can put my patron list at the end. I'm a very disorganized guy when it comes to day-to-day life and getting things done. When I'm focused, I'm focused, and when I'm not, I'm not. But when it comes to making videos, I just like to sit in front of the camera and talk. It's not going to make my channel grow any faster, but this is how I do things. No jump cuts, no editing, no removing clips. And I appreciate any one of you who is willing to even listen for this long, because we live in a world where we're constantly distracted. A world where we're choosing our distractions most often. And it's not always our fault. This dopamine rush we get when we check our email or, Google something or watch a video, we're being manipulated by the technology that we've created. But at the same time, we do have the choice. We do have the choice to step away from it and at least step away from some of the controversial crap. And I highly urge people to do so. So now that this video has been about 33 minutes and 33 seconds, I guess I'll part ways. And peace and love to you all. Take care now.